Welcome to the PM Pour, the podcast for property managers. It's a place to pour a cup of coffee, pour yourself a glass of wine, or simply pour your heart out. The PM Pour is a community designed specifically for those in property management. It's a safe space to communicate, network, and learn from one another. So welcome back to the PM Pour. This week we have Andrea Heading with us. She is the CEO of the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. And Andrea has already joined us once. She's spoken about herself a little bit in our last meeting. And this week we are going to dive into the Real Estate Institute a little bit more. We're going to talk about particularly, I think, Andrea, this week, I wanted to touch base on you joining REISA. I think it was in 2023. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah.
Yep.
So, January 23.
And from my recollection of things, that would have been right at about the time when we were looking at legislation changes for the Residential Tenancies Act here in South
That's
Australia.
right. So, 14th of February was when sort of like the first rollout was done, which was, changing the bond threshold from 6 weeks to 4 weeks. And also, and charging sort of a certain amount under $800 and over. So I know that you all knew that then at the time. And then there was the gradual introduction in terms of a rollout of reforms in the residential tenancy space. So look, I must say a lot of the groundwork was done by REISA before I started, like in terms of canvassing our members with there was a consultation paper from government, and really there was a huge amount of feedback back from the PM space in regards to the reforms, and I think at the time, and actually one of the big ones too was pets and rentals as well, and it was funny because the government sort of at the time really sort of revealed a reform almost one at a time rather than, one whole sweeping lot. And I think there's a whole lot of, there was a few things behind that. I think the minister at the time, Minister Michaels, was fairly new to the position. I mean, she was actually terrific to work back with, but, there was a lot of consultation that happened that was behind the scenes. So then once I started and was in the hot seat, certainly that conversation was taken back up with the minister and also Consumer and Business Services. But it really was a year of major reform that keep really going until the prescribed form this year, I'd say. So, for the industry, it's been 2 years of new legislation. And I think probably if we hadn't have had so much feedback and such great feedback from the industry, we talk about there's a lot of prescribed grounds that are in there now. So, you can refuse a pet for X, Y, Z. There was only 2 in the original paper that we got back from government, and we sort of like pushed for more in terms of, reasonable grounds and what does that look like. So I think from advocacy is very hard to see in action. Because there's a lot of back and forward on it. It's more about, for us, our fiduciary duties to our members, but to and also, to look after sort of landlords and make sure that they're aware of their rights and obligations and property managers in that space. And also to make sure that it's not a hunting ground, because I think, real estate can be such a punch bag. And I think particularly like in the PM space as well. And I mean, honestly, what the community navigates day to day is quite huge. And I think, Kylie, you and I have talked about that before, but you've got multiple people that you answer to. So you've got your landlord or your investor that you look after, the agency owner if you're employed in that space, or it's your own business, so you're responsible for yourself and your staff if you've got staff employed. Also back with the tenant. And also making sure that sort of like all the right boxes are being ticked at the right time. So it really is a huge, what I would see, multitasking area.
Yeah, it is, and you have to be across so many things and problem solving all the time.
Yep,
It's one of the
yep.
biggest attributes that a property manager needs to be skillful at
Yes,
is
yeah, yeah.
to be a problem solver and to be able to differentiate. Or I think we were talking about it the other day, triaging. You have to sort of
That's
work
right.
out what
Yes, yeah,
what needs to go where in the whole
that's
scheme of
right.
things. So
Yeah,
jumping into a CEO position right at the change of something so massive, because I think the
yeah,
legislation change prior to that was probably
yes,
10 years ago,
that's
or
right.
10 years prior, pretty much like 10 or 11 years prior. So that would have been a massive jump. What are some of the big areas now that REISA is actually currently advocating for on behalf
Yeah,
of property managers and business owners and landlords and so forth?
yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing at the moment is CBS and SACAT. So SACAT, I think there's, you know, a delay in terms of tribunal hearings and some mixed responses back from tribunal members as well in
Yep.
terms of yeah, and what resolution actually looks like. So, so from a SACAT perspective, we've met with the with the division head or the division director of SACAT to address REISA's concerns, and in fact, we included it was myself and Adam Blight who he heads up training for REISA. His focus is on the RTO world, but because he's such a seasoned property manager, he's really good to have
Definitely.
with us. And just because, once again, he has seen everything, but also understands the pressure points. And we also had a REISA member that's in the PM space speak with the director at the same time, so that it's more of it wasn't a whinge fest. It was actually more about, look, this is practically some examples of things that we can see happening. Now, that's been taken on notice by the director, who is going to use some of our examples as direct training back to the tribunal members. But we've also taken it a little bit further in terms of notifying the minister's office and also CBS, even though SACAT and CBS are different divisions, but
Yeah.
certainly more about process delay, bond returns, and also perhaps modernising SACAT's approach a little bit, because the other thing we've heard is even not being able to supply a link to photos to download. Some
Yeah.
tribunal members won't look at 360-degree video footage, etc.
That's correct.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's a big thing. So, and I think for us, it's all about saying the world is changing, the way that information is surfaced is changing as well. So we need government systems to match that. And then I think from consumer and business services perspective, it's been pretty difficult because of uh, um, different people moving to different roles. So there's no legacy of knowledge. And
Yeah.
so from our perspective, it's also bringing them up to speed in terms of, this is particularly sort of in the rental reform area, and questioning some of the or presenting some of the issues that have arisen too. I mean, it's a big thing is sometimes they'll do something on their part, like say, for example, the break lease calculator, which we know has got problems with it in terms of how it's worked out. We've sent some messaging back to CBS on that as well. But probably from our perspective, it's we need the wheels to turn a little bit quicker, or
Yeah.
go faster and go a bit. Yeah. So we are the squeaky wheel, believe it or not. And I think it's hard with PMs who I think the prescribed form too. We've had so much that's come back, some information that's come back in that judgment call that you have to make on who you'll be putting in the property, sort of seems to go against the area of we're actually deep in AML implementation, anti-money laundering, and so that the sales side need to do deep dives like you wouldn't believe. So it seems that the regulation's a little bit out of kilt.
Oh, right. So you're talking about the A1 form for
Yeah. Yeah,
application
and
for
what you can
tenancy.
ask and what you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
ask
yeah,
in the
yeah.
prescribed form. So,
So,
yeah.
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 So
Yeah,
that's
so
making
where
it
you've
difficult. So
Yep,
the change is making it difficult for the sales
that's
side of
right.
things.
So,
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
had
that's
lots of
interesting.
feedback too on that, which has been on the prescribed form or the implementation of Form A1 since when did it was introduced September last year. Oh,
Last year.
the soft
Mm.
launch September and
And
then
then
the hard
1st of
launch
Jan.
January.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and the pain points that that's presented, because if anything, it slows down a market that didn't need to slow down, I think,
Yeah.
too, in terms of your checks and balances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. So you're working
Yeah.
on a few things for the for the
Yeah.
industry behind the scenes, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Yes. Yeah.
So, if there's something that property managers, landlords, business owners disagree with, particularly when it comes to legislation, because I know that when the legislation was changed a couple of years ago now, there was obviously things that people didn't really like over probably more so that with some areas and other areas and so forth. What sort of recommendations do you have to people if they're not happy with something, the way something is in a piece of legislation, like the A1
Yeah.
form, for example?
Mhm.
Is there a process that you recommend people to follow, or rather than actually just saying I don't love it and there's just blah blah blah? Is there
That's right.
anything Is there anything people can do? What do
Yeah,
you
so
think? Yeah,
so
constructively. Yeah,
constructive. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have a sort of like a direct feedback line, of course, into CBS. So, and each time we meet with them every 6 weeks. So certainly, pressing issues can be raised with us, and we have an ongoing dialogue there. So that's directly into REISA. That could come either directly to myself or via uh, uh, member services or by Adam. So certainly because Adam's got such a close ear to the industry, some of the issues that are raised with him are then equally raised back with me. So we sort of so there's one point. The second is we always say, draft a letter to your member of parliament. For your, and so that, and that used to be REISA of old to say, bombard them with letters and do all of that. The hard part with all of that is that certainly you'd get like a stock standard reply to say, thank you for raising your concern. We understand that, then it becomes part of, say, into the minister's briefing team and into, say, CBS as well. I think what numbers help, like isolated cases of bringing, issues up don't, but when we're sort of talking at scale, it helps to do things on a bigger level, because I think the
yeah,
more noise you make, the more attention it gets for
yeah. It's
as
kind of
well.
the way that I see it is that if you just do what you said, is to email your MP or to the minister, for example. Um, if you're going to do it, you're just a bit of a thorn in their side.
That's right.
But
Yeah,
if it happens at scale, a
that's
grand
right.
scale, then it's
Yeah,
something that turns into more than just a thorn in someone's side. It's something that actually something has to
that's
be
right.
done, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think where it's difficult too, Kylie, is because there's a federal alignment, say in our market with, and all states are Labor with the exception of Tasmania, that there was the sort of National Housing Accord and particularly focusing on the rental sector, that a lot of the Labor governments around in all the states now sort of align themselves federally, whereas they used to sort of operate just within their own state. Although Victoria, and I've said this before, is in an enormous world of pain in terms of what's happening with them in terms of
yeah,
uh, from a rental perspective and also from a sales perspective. It's quite a punitive state compared to what it is here. But certainly, what we do is we agitate, say, on a local level, but we also lean into the Real Estate Institute of Australia, which we're a member of,
yeah,
and by us being a member of the REIA, all of our members that are sort of part of that national pool, that certainly helps as well, because they're based in Canberra. They're near the feds when it comes to sort of like housing policy, and And so that actually assists too on a grander scale. And I must say, REISA punches above their weight in terms of how much information we feed up the chain, whether we do to sort of on a state level or also on a federal level as well. I would say in the past I would have said to agitate with the opposition, because sometimes that helps when there's sort of like healthy tension points between the two. I think that's been a little bit more difficult of late, just because of maybe certain parties needing to get their act in order in their part too. So
yeah. Yep.
When the rental reforms were when the second reading was debated at in Parliament House, I mean, Kane Cook, REISA chair, and I went and sat and listened to the debate. I think we left about 1 o'clock in the morning, but we wanted to make sure that all of our sort of like, our issues were raised at a level that, and look, we were the only ones sitting in the gallery. But
I mean,
it was,
at that time in the morning, 1 o'clock, or
yeah, exactly,
midnight.
You wouldn't have. Yeah, I don't know if anyone was watching on
dedication.
Parliament time. Yeah, that's right. But certainly, it's more about making sure that we're visible, and so that it's not just sort of something that's debated and everybody's at home, or whatever, that we were actually there to, because we want to see what's talked about. And then when I had to do a press call with the Premier and Minister Michaels and myself, they had found a tenant who was prepared to go on television with a chihuahua. And this was all about, for pets and rentals. And I think, of course, pick the smallest animal that, like, you think will make the smallest amount of damage or whatever. And one of the journos asked a question to say, what do you think of pet bonds? And the pet owner said, I think it's a fabulous idea, and sort of went off on a tangent. And I said, well, of course, we can't talk about pet bonds because that was something that was, that we had requested that wasn't allowed. So it's sort of like, we can't reopen that. So, so I think, from members' perspective, certainly it's, the industry's perspective, and we speak for all of industry. I mean, obviously we've got our membership base, but we believe in the fact that we need to be a voice for the entire industry, not just, for those that are members of us. I mean, of course, we'd love everybody to be members of us, but it's more as in advocacy needs to happen, as we talked about before, at scale, but representing all of the industry and metro and regional. So,
yeah, that's right. Regional sometimes gets left behind a little bit, but
right.
But you're right. As an industry overall, we need to be working together in order to make things happen and so forth.
Right.
So if there's anything that somebody's not particularly happy with, you need to be able to get together and push it through. And things can be changed. It just needs everybody just needs to work together in order for that to actually happen.
Yes.
So, so thanks so much for joining us again, Andrea. I haven't finished with you yet. We're just running out of time for this particular episode, but we will be having another one with you. So thank you so much. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon with regards to the REISA hotline, because I really want to talk to you a bit about that. So thanks so much, Andrea. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe so you're notified of new episodes as they land. If you'd like to speak to me further, please contact me at kylielange.com.